All right, so I wanted to, this is my, I guess I could call it my Bitcoin diary. You know, I'm kind of like sucked into the vortex of Bitcoin. Yeah, I first heard about it and I just, started to gravitate toward it. It has a very attractive quality about it. And so I'm learning new stuff as well here, and I love coming to these. So thanks, Amir, for inviting me. I consider myself more of a participant in hearing about stuff than a presenter. But my Bitcoin diary since I was at the Prague event, I'll give you some updates here. So my internet project, which is called piratemyfilm.com, which is a crowdfunding platform, is structured differently than other crowdfunding platforms, and then it's structured more as an exchange. So when you list a project, there's no time limit for the project. It just exists almost as a security on this crowdfunding platform. When it gets to that 100% of funding, then there's a closing. But so we kicked off with PayPal, but PayPal, it sucks. They couldn't upgrade to a business account because it had pirate in the name. So because it had pirate in the name, this became an issue. So I said, well, what about Pirates of the Caribbean? It's a Hollywood movie. Are you discriminate against them? No. So they couldn't get it. So then my developer had to work around this by a system of payments, which took 6 months to create, and it cost me to create that. And then it's not user-friendly at all, and it worked, but it was very clunky. It wasn't particularly, nice to work with. So at some point, I just said, I'm just going to go with Bitcoin. So now we're just 100% Bitcoin. Don't use anything else but Bitcoin. Yeah. So it was easy to develop. We work with BitPay, which is one of the sponsors here. BitPay is, we met in Prague, and it was the first guy to, Tony over there at BitPay, you really got me even more sucked into the vortex that is Bitcoin. So we work with them, and it works very, very well. And a couple of applications for Bitcoin and crowdfunding became apparent. Number one was investigative journalism. So investigative journalism, is something that's not funded very much in the U.S. at all. And so as we have a show, Keiser Report, we like to have good reports and investigative journalism. So we set up projects on piratemyfilm.com for investigative journalism. We worked with a journalist in Connecticut named Terry Boole, and she was doing a story about New Canaan, Connecticut. So as an investigative journalist, a couple of good things. You're not subjected to the WikiLeaks effect, right? You don't have if you're going against a political establishment, you don't have the problem of them cutting you off as they did with WikiLeaks. So this worked out well. All the other attributes of Bitcoin, of course, are at play. It's the speed, the cheapness, the convenience of it all came into play. Then the crowdfunding element comes together, and so she was able to raise enough funds to make a documentary film, which we then showcased on Keiser Report, and then she went on a couple of other media outlets, and she talked about the fact that it was using Bitcoin and using crowdfunding. So this is a great, I think, application for this currency, because it's great for the investigative journalists around the world who are doing stories in hot zones, in war zones. They are going to be, it's going to be very challenging for them to do stories anyway, and to pay them through the normal channels, it would be very challenging. So this allows for that to happen, which is great. And I think they're going to see more of that. It's a natural application. I think we're going to definitely try to sponsor that more. On the site itself, which we're going to expand to beyond just film projects, so it'll be anything you want to list at all, not just film, but any project. So a couple of interesting things came up. We have something listed, which is a defense fund for Kim.com, who's in trouble in New Zealand with his project, which is he got shut down essentially by the copyright industry came in, and they shut him down, and now he's incurred a lot of legal costs. So there's a Kim.com legal defense fund they're raising money through Bitcoin using crowdfunding. Then there's also this project, which is, I guess, more controversial, which is that somebody put up a ransom, 1 million Bitcoins, I think, for the Mitt Romney's tax return. So, okay, that's on the site. That's listed on the site. And I got some reaction from the Bitcoin community saying, maybe that's not great because, you're going to encourage a lot of unwanted attention, and it'll be a net negative, for Bitcoin. So I'm sensitive to that. I mean, so I haven't heard a lot of words either way. The actual response in terms of just looking at that as it exists on the platform, it doesn't generate a lot of interest. One of the things about that kind of exchange model is you can observe how it's trading, so to speak, in relation to other projects to gain an interest or an appreciation of what the interest is. So even if it's not funded per se, you can still gauge the interest in that project and what the appetite is for that type of thing. And so based on the fact that it doesn't really generate huge interest, I would think that the existing Bitcoin community is probably making that decision. They're saying maybe this is more controversy than we need right now, so they're not jumping on it. So that they made that decision, and so that's reflected in the current state of that project as it exists on the exchange, which I think is valuable information in of itself. Once these things become 100% funded, as you get to that higher level, then other things emerge, other considerations, and other discussions are had, and it would become more of a topic. But right now, it's just existing in that zone, which is kind of interesting. Also, let's say in 2010, I was on the Alex Jones show in America. Don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a pretty popular radio program that goes out to millions of people around the world. And I introduced this concept of crash JP Morgan buy silver. And the price of silver was about $26 an ounce at that time. And this generated a very big response. Hundreds of videos and support was made. And some guy in Canada came out with a silver coin that he ended up selling 50,000 or 100,000 ounces of these coins. Wherever I go, now people come up to me with these. And so I know that they've been distributed out there. And so since that time, we've got a new one. So this is a group now in the UK, which is the Birmingham Mint. And this is the new silver Keiser. And this particular model, which is now just available, will be in the next week or so, is made from recycled silver. So this is all going to be silver that's being recycled or sourced from ESG sourced silver. These are mines that have the ESG designated compatibility with those goals as stated by the UN under social responsibility. And so this dovetails back into the currency wars theme, because as the currency wars heat up and as central banks continue to debase their currencies by issuing more fiat money, more paper money, corporations are going to be faced with a decision about what to do with their cash hoards. The economy is in shambles, but corporations are sitting on record amounts of cash, which is one of the reasons why the economy is in shambles. But nevertheless, they have huge amounts of cash on their balance sheet. Just to pick one company as an example, you've got Apple Computer with something like $120 billion in cash. So as the currency war heats up and they become more concerned about that cash value, they're going to start looking at things like precious metals to protect themselves against the ravages of currency debasement. And when you look at precious metals, they have a mandate under the UN corporate resolution, etc., that they have to look at ESG type products. So this would be the only ESG silver bullion, gold bullion product in the market. So they would have to look at this, which means that if the corporations begin to dedicate their cash balances to precious metals, they're going to take an already extremely tight market, gold and silver, and you're bringing in an enormous buyer at that point. And the prices are going to start to reflect, A, the paper money tsunami that's collapsing the economy, and B, overwhelming huge new demand from players that have not been in the market at all. Less than 2% of global investable funds are in precious metals around the world. On corporate cash balance sheets, that's probably less than 2%. So now you've got a market which is the total investable global asset, investable fund market of approximately, I think it's $17 trillion. Less than 2% is in gold and silver. You start to shift even 2 or 3% of that money into gold, which is only the entire above ground stock of 160,000 tons of gold, because all the gold that's ever been mined in the past 5,000 years. If you start to, it's worth about 9 trillion. So here you have 15 trillion looking for a new home. There's 9 trillion in gold, and a lot of that's already in the hands of sovereign states. It's off the market. I think a third is off the market. Silver is extremely tight. There's only 1 billion ounces of silver above ground available. There's only about 800 million ounces produced per year comes out of the ground, and then that's shrinking. So potentially, like Mark Zuckerberg could actually own every single available silver ounce in the world today. Well, maybe not so much anymore, but a few weeks ago, Mark Zuckerberg, back in the, a few of those guys. So it only take, it's only $35 billion gets you every single ounce of silver available in the world today. So it doesn't, this is part of the campaign for the crash JP Morgan buy silver was, again, under the currency wars, under the banking fraud, under the wealth confiscation, under the hope to empower people with things like Bitcoin, is to put another tool in their hands, which is that if you take physical silver off the market, it's a direct attack on these banks' balance sheet. In particular, JP Morgan, when they took over Bear Stearns, they inherited a 3 billion ounce position of naked silver shorts. It means that they've got 3 billion ounces of silver that they've sold short, which is, but naked sold short, which refers to a practice of selling contracts that don't even exist. And this used to be a controversy a while ago in terms of does short selling, naked short selling exist? And then here's something from The Economist magazine from this past year. A rare slip-up by lawyers has helped to shed some light on a high-profile legal battle. In a normal short sale, shares are borrowed, or at least located, before being sold. In a naked short sale, there is no attempt to pre-borrow the stock, or even check that it exists. Creating fails to deliver. This messes with the laws of supply and demand. Allowing shorting to exist beyond the actual limits of the number of shares outstanding. This comes from unredacted documents from Goldman Sachs and Merrill Lynch, who were committing these fraudulent acts. So this was in The Economist in May of the 2012 edition. This has now come out in the public domain, the existence of these firms engaged in naked short selling. They're selling stock or futures contracts that don't exist. Another word for that is counterfeit. And that's exactly what they're engaged in. We saw that famously during the 2008 market crash with Lehman Brothers, when more stock was sold short than existed in the entire flotation of the company. As Wall Street ganged up and put that company out of business to make a quick buck, because those short sales paid off. You're buying your naked shorts back at that zero price, you're closing out the trade. That's how you make that profit, because you're making the difference between what you originally sold at and then what you're buying to cover, the way the short sale works. So again, a massive fraud. So you start to see how fraudulent the system is. The martingale betting strategy, naked short selling. A couple from the previous centuries. Here's one from Frederick Bastiat, 1850. When plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men living together in society, they create for themselves in the course of time a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it. That's the time that we're living in now. The current legal system and the banking system glorifies and promotes plunder. And then, of course, the one from John Locke. When the social contract is broken, the people must revolt. Sounds like good advice there. So I've got about 2 hours left on this presentation. Okay, so I want to wrap it up with a I want to talk about gold and silver versus Bitcoin. And so, because I think you can make the case that they're comparable in many ways. And so if you go back to, let's say, 2,300 years ago, Aristotle's qualities of good money. Aristotle was the first to talk about gold as good money. So these are the things that he talks about must be in place. It must be durable, so it must withstand the elements. It must be portable. It must be divisible and consistent or fungible, and it must have intrinsic value. So by using those standards, I think you can certainly slap Bitcoin into that. I mean, it's definitely portable. The divisible and consistency aspect, or the divisibility of it, is far better than gold. 0.00001 was a bid on the recent auction. The intrinsic value argument is certainly built into Bitcoin with the limited supply issues. So it fits into there, I think going forward you're going to see a lot more competition actually from gold and silver, a lot more compatibility with the two. I was looking at gold itself, which is kind of interesting. Is the atomic number is 79 for gold. Elements with atomic numbers larger than iron. Gold is thought to have been formed from a supernova, a nucleosynthesis process. Their explosions scattered metal-containing dust, including gold, into the region of space in which they later condensed into our solar system and Earth. That's Bitcoin here. This is the scattering of the ideas that are condensing into this thing called Bitcoin. This is the currency going forward. I said that especially for Amir, because he's somewhere, he's enjoying that statement, I'm sure. All right, well, that's it for this portion of the program. If you want to do any Q&A or anything, happy to do so. Thanks.